Good afternoon, Toastmasters. Today I am going to talk to you about digital accessibility. What is it? Why is it important? That's why we're here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I should have done that first. And I can hear Marjorie in my head saying, you don't have to say that. Just a little bit about me. They call me the accessibility evangelist. Okay, they don't call me that. I call myself that. And I just kind of hope it catches on. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1991 to 1994, and I began working in digital accessibility starting in 2000. Fair warning, I will randomly accessibility check any document or website that gets sent to me. Heather can attest to this for as many times as I've went back and said, none of this is accessible. It's one of the pitfalls of my job, I believe. I began my Toastmaster journey in February of 2022, and a little bonus fact about me, I do collect playing cards, and I currently have over 600 decks of playing cards. In this slide, you do see a visual, and it is a man in a suit carrying a briefcase with his head butting up against the wall, and the caption reads, "The accessibility of your document." You probably don't realize how much digital content you create every day and how much of it you may be sending out, that this might be the user experience for some people trying to read your document. So what is accessibility? You might think accessibility, well, they can access it, so it is accessible, but that is not the case. Accessibility is the practice of making information, activities, and the environment usable to as many people as possible. In our environment, we see accessibility all the time. We see ramps in front of buildings. We see bars in handicap bathroom stalls or in showers at hotels or at the gym. We see the curb cuts on our sidewalks. Those were not there for the mom pushing her jogging stroller when she's out for a jog. That was not the original intent of them. They weren't there for your kids to more safely go from one side to the other on their bicycles. Those are there for people with mobility disabilities. But we utilize these physical attributes in the world all the time without thinking twice. Digital accessibility is quite like adding a ramp in front of a building. You are making information more readable for folks who might not otherwise be able to access it. There are a few laws in place that affect how digital accessibility is enforced. The 1973 Rehabilitation Act passed by Congress. Section 504, not so much to do with digital accessibility, but still notable if you work for a federal or state entity. If you work for any business or organization that receives federal funding in order to provide services. Section 504 says no qualified individual with a disability in the U.S. shall be excluded from, denied benefits, or be subjected to discrimination. If you have ever noticed, and you might not even know this, there are ASL interpreters at courthouses. Documents and instructions must be provided in Braille. It is why government buildings were some of the first buildings to have things like ramps and doors that accommodate wheelchairs. Section 508 was amended in 1998 to the Rehabilitation Act, and that requires that electronic information and what is known as information technology systems, so technology that is purchased, must also be accessible and usable to everyone. The Americans with Disabilities Act, Title III, covers businesses and nonprofits. Depending on where you are in the country, some courts believe that Title III also covers things like your websites, You can get sued under Title III of the ADA if you have a public business or a nonprofit and you have a website or digital content that is available for people that is required for them to use in order to engage or take part of whatever service you are providing. And if that is not accessible, you can be sued under one of these laws. For most individuals, these laws don't really apply. But let's start with a few disability statistics. 61 million adults in the United States have some type of disability. 1 in 4 adults. The highest population of people with disabilities in the United States live in our southern states. 13.7% of people with a disability have a mobility disability, which means they have some difficulty walking or ambulating or climbing. This is the largest percentage of the total percentage of people who have disability. So it is the number one type of disability we see. 6.8% of people with a disability have an independent living disability, meaning they have difficulty doing errands by themselves, being able to just do those simple things to care for themselves. And I'll jump a little bit ahead. 2 in 5 adults age 65 and over have at least one disability, and 1 in 4 women have a disability. So these are pretty high numbers, which means you or someone you know are probably living with some type of disability. Disabilities are not always visible. Which takes us to a cognitive or learning disability. 10.6 or 10.8% of those who have a disability report having a cognitive or learning disability. That is second to mobility disability. So that is the hierarchy of the types of disabilities in this country. A cognitive disability is something that causes problem with concentration, remembering, or decision making. And a learning disability is any number of disorders, including dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia. If you don't know what the latter two are, dysgraphia are folks who have trouble speaking. And it's not in our Toastmaster way of having trouble speaking with ahs and ums, or even having the confidence to get up and speak. But dysgraphia is where people will mix words up in their head when trying to speak, much like dyslexia is where letters or words may get switched around when someone is trying to read. And dyscalculia is folks who switch around numbers. So they have problems performing mathematical equations, not because they don't understand the math, but because the numbers move around on them. So as I mentioned, you or someone you know. Ask yourself, are you one of the 1 in 5 people with a disability? Do you know someone who is? And when you're creating digital content, do you think about the audience, or do you do what is convenient? What is easy? I can just copy and paste this in here. I can just shove this graphic here. I think this looks pretty. I love these colors. I copied this style from what someone else did. I have a website, and rather than creating a page that lists out the information, I'm just going to use this graphic that I used on Instagram because I already made it, and I'll just shove it on the web page. I'm going to explain coming up why a lot of these decisions we may make to be quick and easy in our creation of digital content is causing roadblocks and barriers for many users that you might not even think about. Disabilities can often be classified in one of 3 ways. Permanent disabilities. Permanent disabilities are things like blindness or vision impairment, deafness or severe hearing loss, mobility disabilities, and cognitive and learning disabilities. But what about temporary disabilities? Have you ever broken your arm or your leg, sprained your wrist, had to walk with crutches, and you try to get around in the world, trying to get that door open with your crutches. When I broke my hip, I spent a few months between a wheelchair and a walker before I was able to walk with crutches and eventually be able to move without assistance. And I was living in the South at the time, the coastal South. So it was old South. Nothing was made accessible there. I used to have to push these heavy doors open and shove a crutch in real quick to try to prop it open. And I was extremely lucky if someone happened to see me and would hold the door for me. It was difficult to get around. I was at a restaurant, the bathroom had a disabled stall. So I had plenty of room to hold on to the bars and lean my crutches up against the wall or to get in and out of my wheelchair. But the door was so heavy, I couldn't get into the restroom. And I had to sit there until some gentleman happened to walk out of the men's room. And, pardon me, sir, would you mind opening the door for me? This poor man blushed because it was, again, the South, and pushing the women's restroom door open. He did it while covering his eyes. And I had to assure him that there was nothing in there that isn't in the men's room as well. And finally, or in other types of temporary disabilities, you might have had your eyes dilated at the eye doctor. It is a temporary disability. You can't read well for a short period of time. But a lot of our technology today, like our smartphones, have screen readers. You can actually turn the tech on and have it read your email to you without having to visually read. And there are also situational impairments, low lighting or highlighting. You know, when you're outside and you try to read your phone in the bright sun and you have to kind of try to shield it or turn the contrast up on your phone. You might be in a really noisy environment, but you have to watch this training video that Jonni did on digital accessibility. You can turn on closed captioning if the video is uploaded to YouTube and auto closed captioning was added. I do have closed captioning turned on for my slides. It is an auto captioner, so it may mishear me once in a while. It is not foolproof. If you ever do video, it's got to have closed captioning. Closed captioning is not just for folks who are deaf or hearing impaired. So we utilize accessible technology every day, even when we do not have disabilities. So again, things like closed captioning. But there are ways that documents are structured and written up and all kinds of little things. If you think about our modern texting, that was based off the TTY phone system that was available for people who were deaf, that's been around for decades. Plenty of decades, lots of decades. But hey, what a great way to be able to just have some words go across a wire and sent to someone else without having to actively talk back and forth. Oh, that's texting. If you have not heard of the spoon theory, you may have heard it bandied about. You might not have fully understood what is the spoon theory. The spoon theory is just a metaphor, and it was used to describe a way to explain to someone without a disability how much energy it takes in order to complete something. But we can all use it because we all, even if you are not physically or cognitively disabled, we all get exhausted. So think of having a pile of spoons. We are all allocated the same amount of spoons. I need to throw some laundry in the wash today. Well, there's a spoon. I was out really late last night getting my hair done because I was also a hair model for a video for my hairdresser, and we had to take a lot of extra time and didn't get wrapped up until after 1 in the morning. That's going to take me 2 spoons now to do that same task. If I have a cognitive disability such as ADHD, or maybe I'm neurodivergent, I may have had a traumatic brain injury due to an IED because I was a veteran, or maybe I was in a severe accident. Maybe I played sports and got hit one too many times and have a small TBE, traumatic brain injury, or maybe I had a stroke. All of these things cause doing some things a little bit more energy for folks to complete than not. If I have a physical disability, ambulating to get out to where my washer and dryer is, that might now cost me 3 spoons if my osteoarthritis is acting up. If I have to take pain meds in order to manage how much I'm hurting today, well, now it's taking 4 spoons. My friends want to hang out. I have to get up and get dressed and do my makeup and get in the car. This is all stuff we exert energy on all the time. But for some folks, it's costing them more spoons. So if you ever have a friend that says, I'm sorry, I can't do that, I am out of spoons, this is what they mean. They have used up their limited number of spoons and can no longer really actively do any task to any level that would make it worthwhile for you or them to do that task. When we talk about digital accessibility, we expend energy trying to read those emails that District 100 sends out to us every week in order to see that there are even learning labs happening. We expend this energy just even scrolling through our own social media feeds to find out information about our friends or the brands we're following or what's happening at Knott's Berry Farm this weekend. Is there any cool events? Do I want to go? What can I do? You can start with what Edith says here, or Edna from the Incredibles, no PDFs. PDFs are often thought of as a very easy universal thing that people use. We use it in Toastmasters all the time. Our agendas are almost always in PDF. So sometimes we have to use PDFs. But when you can avoid a PDF, please do avoid a PDF. But we can all do little things when we create digital content that just makes it a little easier. You don't need to be an expert like me. I have over 20 years of doing this. I understand web and a lot of different aspects of accessibility. It is my job to know this. You don't need to know this, but you can learn a little bit that applies to what you do. Start small. Headings. When you create a digital document, one heading, one per page or per document. This is questionable if you ever have to create a huge multi-chapter document. You may have a title page and then use a heading 1 per chapter. That is completely up to you, but most of us are not creating huge documents like that. One heading 1, the heading 1 should tell your user, what am I finding on this document? Heading should follow hierarchically. Heading 2s are main sections, heading 3s are subsections, and heading 4 through 6 are subsections of subsections. When you're creating a Word document, don't just make your font bigger. That is not a heading. The heading has to be written in the code, and I will show you an example. Here's a Google Doc. And we can see it says pet care and then cats. And then we go down, there's water and some text and food, dry food, there's some text, wet food. You really kind of have to struggle to see where the different sections are on here. And in Google Docs, and Word has the same thing. And I love this because I do get severe carpal tunnel. I often joke I started my career in administration, then I joined the Marine Corps. Then I spent a decade waiting tables, and now I'm in IT. My wrist has been used and abused since 1986. And sometimes using a mouse and scrolling gets really difficult for me, so I like navigating using my keyboard. There is no outline provided for this document. If this were a Word document, there is a navigation pane that opens up. So when you use headings appropriately, I now have this navigation tree. The headings also stand out a little bit more visually, but a screen reader, so folks who are blind or vision impaired, or severely dyslexic or ADHD, traumatic brain injuries, may have had a stroke, neurotypical folks, neurodivergent folks, they use screen readers too, because it's easier for them to process auditorially than visually. So when you create a document using headings, they can tell their screen reader, just read me the headings. Because I'm telling you right now, you and I, assuming no cognitive or learning disabilities, we're not reading all of this. We're skimming for these bigger words. We're looking for the section we want to read. So why would you force folks who are using other types of technology to read your content to read everything? When you do not provide a structure like this, they have no way to say, oh, I just want to learn about dog food. Oh, look at that, was one click for me. And for someone using a screen reader, they can do the same thing. When you have that document without those headings, you lose that. Alternative text. This is where we tell a screen reader or users who have PTSD, severe epilepsy, migraine disorders, traumatic brain injuries, or they're otherwise not neurotypical. In your browser settings, did you know that you can turn media off? Some people choose to do this because they might live in rural areas and maybe they just don't have good internet where they are. If anyone is familiar with where La Habra and Fullerton meet, you could walk 10 paces and go from 5 bars on your phone to 0. So sometimes environment plays a part in how good of a connection you can get to having internet access at all. Some users may be lower income and can't afford quality internet. Some users may be browsing on their mobile devices and they have pay-as-they-go data because they can't afford unlimited. So you can turn off downloading media for a lot of reasons. When you tag your graphics with alternative text, that is what is visually seen when your image does not load for whatever reason, and it is what is heard by users who are using a screen reader. You have to be careful, however. Here's a clip of what a screen reader reads. Do you remember when Wordle was a thing? There was a hot minute where everyone was playing Wordle and everyone was posting their Wordle scores on social media. To a screen reader user, this is what they heard.
White large square green square white large square yellow square white large square green square yellow square white large square green square white large square yellow square white large square green square white large square green square Wordle 199 and 5/6 white large square yellow.
Okay, I know that's really fast, but folks who are blind, like Crystal Preston Watson, is severely vision impaired. She generally wears an eye patch, has limited vision out of one eye. That is what she heard every time her friends were posting Wordle. And at the time when this happened, everybody, I would see 5, 6, 7, 8 posts in a row that were just Wordle scores. Imagine that that's what you would have to listen to. And folks who are vision impaired who use a screen reader, they tend to run their screen readers at 2.5 times speed because they process auditorially as fast as visual folks do as you're reading. So do use alt tags. There is a general rule here. I will provide this slide deck at the end for those who want to have this. I can also take these tips from the Start Small section and put it into a crib sheet for anyone who just wants something that is quick and easy that they can just print out or bookmark or save in a folder and refer to. So this won't disappear after this, and it is widely available online in several of locations. But a good rule of thumb that I teach my users is around 100 characters or less. Don't give unnecessary information. Do not use the word image, picture, icon, or graphic when you create alternative descriptions for your images. A screen reader will say graphic. So if you say something like picture of cat, they're going to hear picture of cat, graphic. Well, thanks. That's not telling me anything. Avoiding using images with too much text. So things like event flyers or infographics, because how do you alt tag that? Step 1, and then type all the text. Step 2, type all the text. Step 3. Infographics are great for limited use, but you should have a text version of it so that folks can see it and read it. Do you know who can't see that really cool graphic you made for the Toastmaster newsletter that goes out every Wednesday? Me on a phone. Some of the graphics aren't too bad, but the Google Challenge has a lot of text on a graphic. Why wasn't that just text? That graphic is this big on my phone. It is not readable. So what do users on a phone have to do? Stretch it, slide it back and forth? Guess what? My ADHD OCD brain is like, nope. I have tried to read the same line 3 times because I keep losing my place every time I slide. So there are so please don't do this. Just make text equivalent. You could make a cool header graphic. I'm not saying to abandon Canva. Canva has its place. Flyer graphics have their place for certain social medias. But when it comes to sending out an email, you can add that graphic. That is fine. But add the text equivalent underneath so users who do not have access to that graphic can still get the information. I might want to copy and paste that email, that address out of that email to put into my calendar so I know where to go for your event. But I can't because it was on a graphic. So what do you do when that happens? It was 179, flip back over to Greenleaf Avenue. And for users who can't see that or can't flip back and forth, they're losing out on a lot of information that you don't think about. When you do add an alt tag, when you're looking at your image, ask yourself, what's in the picture? What is the purpose of the picture? What is in the picture? What is the purpose of the picture? Sometimes the purpose of the picture might be more important than what is actually in the picture. If you want people to feel a certain way when you're displaying an image or graphic to them, if you think I'm using this because people will see themselves in this image, or this image will cause people to go, oh, and then donate to my cause. If that is the case, then you just state that in the alt tag. For users who cannot see your image, just tell them how you want them to feel. Sometimes the context is more important than content. For links, don't just post a URL. A screen reader reads headers. When we were talking about headers earlier, they would say heading level 1, start small. Heading level 2, links. So a screen reader alerts a user what level of heading it is. When a screen reader reads a graphic, I already told you, picture of cat, graphic. When a screen reader reads a link, it says link. Let's watch a video. But if you link a URL, and hopefully everyone that is here or watching this is familiar with the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It is a comedy show that it's satire that makes fun of those hard-hitting cop dramas that were really popular all the time. So this is a short clip from that show. I don't think you need to know anything else about the show other than it is a cop comedy to get this clip.
I visited www.ladies.
Apologies, I don't think I'm sharing sound, so let's fix that.
I hear you. You got it, Johnny.
Okay.
Good.
Oops.
www.ladiesgoodhealthmag.com/6-599-904/943-2 Do you know that site?
Yeah.
Well, apparently it is less painful if you acknowledge the dumpy's feelings.
Ew.
Yes, but don't worry, we'll practice. Hmm? I'll be Marcus. Go.
Marcus, I think we should break up.
That makes me feel sad. I'm sad.
Your sadness is noted.
I feel acknowledged. Thank you for breaking up with me. It will take me 8 minutes to collect my things. I think that went very well.
First, don't we wish breakups were that easy? And two, do you know that site? No. When you present someone with the URL, it doesn't mean anything. Link words that are meaningful. Linking words like click here or read more, not meaningful. But Jonni, if I don't say click here, how will they know? Oh, trust me, they know. We know. You don't have to be told to click a link. We know. So do link meaningful text and avoid repetitious links. You don't have to link the same resource 8 times on one page. It's visual clutter. And for anyone using a keyboard or voice navigation because they have mobility issues, because they could be, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, cerebral palsy, Parkinson's, they don't have hands. They could be quadriplegic. There are tons of ways that people navigate through your content that is not a mouse with a clicker. So for those folks, they're jumping link to help them navigate through your document. That's what's taking them down to the bottom faster. So if you repeat the same link multiple times, they're hitting all of these links. And then a final note, and I'll keep this one brief, colors. Colors must have a high enough contrast so that folks who are vision impaired have low vision or are colorblind can still read your content. There is some information on it here. I do have a resource at the end that is a color contrast checker. Do not use colors as an indicator. Please do not say, click the red button. 8% of all XY chromosome havers are colorblind. 8%, 8 out of 100 are colorblind. So if you've ever heard that old joke, did that guy dress himself? Is he colorblind? Possibly. It's a little bit less than 1% of all XX chromosome havers. So a little bit less than 1% of women have some form of color blindness. There are tools that you can test your color contrast. So if you're in Canva making your cool flyer, if you are updating your works blog or website, or if you're creating a document or an email blast that's going out to your fellow Toastmaster members, there are really quick and easy tools, and you can check the contrast of your colors. You can check to see what it looks like for folks with different color blindnesses. So again, I do have, these are some simple resources. I will make them available for anyone who would like them. These are some video modules on, it is from section 508.gov on how to create accessible Microsoft Word documents. This is the Microsoft Accessibility Checker for Word documentation at Microsoft Word. So if you want to check your Word documents to see how well you are doing. I do have a link here to the WebM color contrast checker. And finally, I did provide a link. It goes to a general accessibility search. There's unfortunately not a lot of stuff, but if you do have access to LinkedIn Learning because you pay for it or your work pays for it, or you have a friend with access and you can borrow their login. What I didn't say that, sorry, we can edit that out of the recording. LinkedIn Learning and other resources like this. You can find a lot on YouTube. And also, I am a resource. If you have questions, you want to know more, you say, you know what, Jonni, I want to be a better ally. I create a lot of digital content, and I didn't even think about how many people aren't reading it. Heather says, our newsletter goes out every Wednesday. I have trouble reading it. I struggle to get through the whole email because there's so much graphical content. The text is too small. It's disjointed and it jumps around. So if I'm having problems, other people are also having problems. Not everyone is skipping it just because I don't want to read it. Some people try and they have a hard time doing so. So if you're making digital content for your coworkers, you're putting together the family reunion this year, and you're going to be emailing and creating a website that's going to go out to all your family members all across the country for your fellow Toastmasters. Let's make better content. Thank you, and I have time for some questions now.
There's a few questions in the chat, Jonni.
Oh, excellent. So Iona asked, what is the reason to avoid PDFs? If you don't know how to check a PDF for accessibility, I have seen people send me a PDF that turns out to just be a giant graphic. If you cannot highlight the text with your cursor, it's not a document, it's a picture. So if you cannot highlight it with your cursor, that means a screen reader cannot read it. Sometimes, if you have a PDF and you try to highlight text and you notice it started highlighting here, but then the highlighting jumped down here and then it jumps back up here, that's the document reading order. So for folks that are using adaptive technologies like screen readers or voice command, eye tracking software, keyboard navigation, that's the order that they're getting that information. And it might not be the order you meant for them to get, but that's the order you ended up putting the content in and then moving it around on the document after. There are ways to make documents accessible for PDF. If you start with a clean, accessible Word document, and then you output to a PDF properly, don't print a PDF. That does not make an accessible PDF. And surprisingly enough, making a document in Acrobat is probably one of the worst ways to make a PDF document. But Adobe Acrobat does have an accessibility checker. It's not terribly intuitive. If you want to learn more on how to make a good accessible PDF that the most people will be able to read, hit me up. I'm happy to show you. So how does this work with email? Not too dissimilar to how it works with a Word document. You can, depending on your email program that you're utilizing, there are ways that you can add alternative text. If you don't know how, or you can't, are not allowed the option to add alternative text, you can always just write a brief description of what's in the image, maybe in parentheses right underneath the image. So that way a screen reader user would still get that information. But when you send out emails, you want your emails to have good headings, good breaks in your email, clear text. When you have something that's just one huge giant paragraph, let me ask those of you who consider yourself to be someone who doesn't really have any cognitive or learning disabilities, are you reading that? The answer is no, if you're being honest. You're skimming it at best. But folks who are using adaptive technologies, or folks who might have some type of cognitive or learning disabilities, or might just be out of spoons for the day, they're not reading it. They're not even skimming it. It just looks like a big gobbledygook. Yes, you can. That is, Helen asked, just to verify, we can write words that have a link embedded. Yes. We oftentimes just copy and paste a URL because it's fast and easy. That URL just becomes a link for us. When it comes to things like social media, we don't have any choice other than just copying and pasting that link. So that is completely different. So in your text in your social media, you want to be clear on where that link is going. You don't want to just say, come check out my thing and paste a URL. But absolutely, we link words that are concise and meaningful. Don't hyperlink an entire paragraph, please. Don't link. When a screen reader, the screen reader will only read a link for the follow-up question on that. Yes, when you have text that is linked, for example, on my resources, where it said LinkedIn Learning and the words LinkedIn Learning was linked, a screen reader would read LinkedIn Learning link. So it will alert them that that is a link. Sandy, absolutely. If you would like to sit down with me and do actual document, Sandy Bastian mentioned about the newsletters. Sorry, I called out the newsletters. It's not you. They have been that way before you got here. So it has been that way since I became a Toastmaster. And I have been saying, can y'all do something about your emails? You are quite literally making it very difficult for a lot of people to get the content you expect them to get. So I am happy to sit with you, Sandy, if you want to learn a little bit more. We will focus just on what you are doing.
Absolutely, absolutely, Jonni. That would be an honor. Thank you so much. I'll get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Oh, and Heather says, yes, I yell at her for editing. She edited the agenda in Acrobat after I created it in Word and output it accessibly to a PDF for her. Luckily, I checked it. It was fine. So I yelled at her for nothing. Sorry, Heather. But it's the downside of my job. As I said, I will randomly, if you just say, hey, Jonni, come to my event, and you send me an email with a graphic or a document, I might just accessibility check it.
It's the accounting of accessibility.
Karen asked, can you use bit.ly to give a descriptive URL? If the backend URL is bit.ly, it doesn't matter if you're linking text. The problem with bit.ly, I know a lot of social media marketers use bit.ly and other, for those who don't know what bit.ly is, it is a URL shortener. It is kind of unnecessary with modern social medias nowadays. They used to count those characters in your URL as part of your character count for things like Twitter. They don't count URL characters anymore, but people still like to use bit.ly. I think you lose brand information when you use bit.ly. Some people are afraid to click on shortened links because they might be older and they might think they're getting phished. And it gives, even for those times when you do have to provide a URL, when your URL is something like toastmasters.org, that means something to a screen reader user. So if they hear link http://www.toastmasters.org, oh, okay, I at least know where I'm going. But if they hear https://www, bit.ly/FJ96. So bit.ly has its place and it is definitely usable. It can be problematic. So it's 50-50 and it depends on who you ask. A lot of people in the accessibility world don't see a problem with it. Some people do. Yes.
Hey, Jonni, what I was meaning is sometimes we have links that through no fault of our own are a gobbledygook. Like people use Amazon to upload files and you get AMZ that blah, 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 blah. I actually teach some of my clients to, when they have that and they can't change it, go ahead and use bit.ly and deliberately create the description on the bit.ly to get around those horrible 57 letters and numbers and exclamation mark URL.
Oh, 100%. That is a completely different use for bit.ly than I just want a shorter URL for no reason than I just want a shorter URL. And it's funny, I stopped screen share, but so you can all laugh at me because I haven't had enough coffee yet this morning. I really was up late getting my hair done. I still have my full screen presentation going, so I'm watching my live captioning still on as I talk. But no, that is a wonderful use of bit.ly, and using bit.ly in that sense, you are actually making it more accessible. Yes, how you name folders and files and upload them to the web is how you create URLs. But when you're using a third-party system such as Amazon or OneDrive or Google Docs, you don't really have control over how your URL is created. And at that, if there are no other questions, again, feel free to reach out to me. You can message me if you want my contact info. I know I had it up there kind of short. You can find me at Jonni Taylor on LinkedIn. And hopefully this wasn't too dense. I didn't want to be, okay, I did want to be preachy because I am the accessibility evangelist, but I was hoping to maybe give everyone some just little tips to get started. And I hope you go forth and help me spread the good word. Thank you, everyone.